Welcome to another River Radio Sports Central podcast alongside Matt Varney from 103.5 ESPN. I am Darren Kinnard, and we're in the midst of the winter postseason. The girls' basketball regionals will start this weekend, Maddie. The boys' seedings came out yesterday as we record on Friday morning. The pairings officially come out later today, but by and large, with the IHSA's decision to actually run the brackets by the seeds, there's not a lot of suspense as we await the 4 o'clock release.
No, not really. You can kind of take a look at it and for the most part, be like, yep, that's exactly how it's going to go. And, I mean, this is kind of what we wanted all along of, just run it straight. There's no reason for some of these ones to be just creating this mess kind of. No real surprise on what we're going to be looking at here. There might be one or two, but, I mean, overall, it should look exactly how you expect things when you're looking at 1 to 15, 1 to 16. It should look exactly how it should between two sites.
When you look at it, there are some sectionals where subsectional A is substantially stronger or weaker than subsectional B. And there was one of the comments on our Facebook page saying, why is it like this? And my response was, it's better than the old days when you used to have, things were just purely geographic, and if you happen to have three great teams in the same area, they would end up in the same regional.
Right.
So the subsectional is better than that. From a competitive balance side, it is not as good as if you seeded it 1 through 32 or 1 through however many teams and ran it as a sectional complex. And I think you're seeing more and more or hearing more and more calls for that. It'll be interesting to see if that comes down the road. I
mean, I wouldn't mind that so much. It would be interesting, but you would lose kind of the charm of what you currently have. But I wouldn't mind it by any means, because you could still easily set it up of this is where the regional is, this is where the sectional is. You could easily still set that all up. So that would be interesting if they go that way. I think that probably will eventually be where they go, as they are IHSA and everybody is inevitably going to try to tweak something always. And sometimes we get big tweaks, sometimes we get small ones. That'll be a bigger one. But I think it's inevitable, whether it's 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, sooner, later, whatever it is, we're going to eventually see it.
And I know the concern is that if you go 1 through 32 and as big an area, when you look at who all's going to the Trico sectional, you potentially could have some big-time road trips and this, that, and the other. But I think some of that is kind of washed away as irrelevant, in a time when we have conferences that are so spread far apart. You think about the river with Salem coming in. I mean, Salem to Metropolis is not a close trip, or even using Salem as part of the example of their current situation in the Cahokia. They're going to Waterloo in Columbia, or to Columbia, not Waterloo yet, Freeburg. But again, the other thing that I think it would open up to, and if I was czar, I would go sectional complex. Yeah. And the top 4 seeds are your regional hosts.
I think that'd be smart.
And then because you're in a time when the IHSA is having more and more difficulty getting schools that want to host.
Right.
And so if you know that you're a top 4 seed and you're going to host, and if you don't have the capacity or if you don't want to, it goes to the next number 5 seed or whatever. And so
imagine the uproar, because you'll see it in the first year or two. You'll imagine the uproar of we get to, but we passed up on it. You'll have communities up in arms that it'll definitely show who actually cares about their schools and wants to make those things happen. People that were not volunteering for that type of thing might start stepping up and saying, oh, we got a regional, I'm going to make sure I'm there to help sell popcorn or whatever.
Well, and you think about it is, in the other reasons this comes up is when we get into the seeds a little bit is, when you look at the subsectional that Weber is in, they're the 2 seed.
Oh, yeah.
Lawrenceville's the number 1 seed. Well, the regional hosts are Altamont and North Clay, who are the 3 and the 4.
Yeah.
So the 1 and the 2 are going to have to play, potentially, if the seeds hold, they're going to have to play on the opponent's home floor to win a regional.
Which isn't the first time we've seen that,
no,
obviously.
Not at all.
But it shouldn't play out that way.
Well, and that's the thing is like, well, why do you play all season to get a great seed and then have to play on the – and then the flip side is well, you could have put in the host.
Oh, well, you're not wrong.
But, again, if we had the top 4 seeds, and you could still set up the bracket where, the regional, the top seed, and then the regional, the 4th seed, and then so that, theoretically that's the way the bracket plays out. Yeah. And then you would have 8 sectional brackets.
That's
right. And there you are. You got your super sectionals and on.
It honestly would make things just a little bit more simple as well. But going back to also what you talked about, just why is this team over here? I mean, all season long I've been looking at the 2A bracket, and Heron being in what we have dubbed for several years now the subsectional of death. The first year that they get to be in 2A, for years they've been begging to go down there, and then of course the year that they get to go down, there's no Kyrie Lucas, no Jonathan Harrison, no Xavier Williams on that team, and they're like, well, of course after we have our huge wave, we get to get bumped down, and then we're in the subsectional that for them they're sitting there saying, why are we in this one? But like you said, in the old way of throw them all in there and put them in a blender, it at least creates some parity by sending them that way. As much as I know Heron probably is sitting there saying, what are you talking about parity right now?
And one other thing before we get to the actual seating is something that came out in the IHSA release from the board meeting is that boys volleyball this spring is going to use the Max Preps RPI formula to come up with seating.
Yeah.
And I will be very interested to see how that plays out because one of the things that, one of the drums that we've banged a lot is the fact that the coaches seat it, but now they're not doing it in the same room,
right?
Which I think makes a difference.
It does.
And, then you have those that, maybe sandbag their team or sandbag somebody else to try to get a more favorable matchup. And I know everybody's shocked that might happen. But to have a separate, and again, it won't be perfect, but, just to make the math and let it do its thing, I think theoretically, it's a good change. We'll see how volleyball plays out.
Yeah, without a doubt. And in terms of basketball specifically, because you can obviously see that might be a path that if this works out for boys volleyball, it could be a path that's followed not just in that sport, but in several other sports.
Yeah.
But I've had conversations in the past 5 years that have changed from, well, you got to take Max Preps with a grain of salt to I've had conversations after saying that to a coach after having that conversation with someone and saying, we got to take that with a grain of salt to coaches being like, well, we're kind of required to submit.
Right.
And obviously the RPI is not going to be perfect, but it is pretty darn close. Last year, we're talking about the 24-25 season. You looked at the Pinckneyville tournament, the Dusty Thomas Hoops Classic, and it was like, man, you've got like 8 teams that are top 250 in the state in this tournament, and it was like top 6, and there were like top 150. So and then you go to this year, and you're like, this tournament is now down quite a bit. But again, you take it with a grain of salt because it is Max Preps, but at the same time, it's only been getting better. That I think it's good to test it on maybe a lesser known sport, no offense to them, and in terms of just the someone's got to be the guinea pig, and they've gone with them, which isn't even a full statewide sport at this time. We don't have boys volleyball in this region, so they kind of just said, we'll go with that, see how it works. And if it works there, I wouldn't be surprised that we see more of it.
Well, and it was unclear whether they're just using the formula.
Right.
Or whether it's like, well, if you don't report your scores to Max Preps, then you basically have taken an L there. Or, they didn't explain exactly how it would work. And also talking with some folks about this, the point was brought up, I hope they still have the coaches seated.
Right.
So you have a comparison.
Yeah.
Okay, what would it have been? What is it now?
Yeah.
I think that is an important thing too.
That I don't disagree, but that does feel like a redundancy that they would cut out. But
I think, but for the test purposes.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. But I do think that You mentioned, not reporting the score. Well, I think that it honestly goes the opposite way, where it's whenever you get a win, you're going to want to report that win.
There has to be a penalty if you don't.
Exactly.
So.
If neither team reports that score, then that means that everybody's losing that right there. You might have, a 25-5 record, but if you didn't report one of those scores, you're 24-5. Sorry, there's nothing sitting there that tells us one way or you're probably 24-6, like you mentioned. So it's something that I think is going to incentivize the teams, whether it's the head coach, a manager, whoever it is. I think it's going to incentivize to report those scores because you're going to be affecting your seeding if you don't.
Well, as a guy that goes through the IHSA scoreboard nightly, it's maybe 50%
yeah,
right
it's
now
spotty.
as something that was supposed to be,
right.
But then again, at the same point, when you get to the postseason in the IHSA score zone, inevitably you have schools that don't report their scores. And that is part of the gig when you are a regional, sectional host, whatever. Same thing with bowling or you name the sport or activity. You are required to submit those results. And I can't tell you how many times it's like, well, all the boxes are green or marked with the scores, and then there's 2 or 3 that are dark because they don't have the scores, and you're like, for the love of all that is holy, your job is to host the regional. It includes to report the score.
Well, and unfortunately, the only way to really punish those hosts is, okay, well, now you've got a check mark next to your name, and we're going to make sure that you are punished basically by saying, oh, you put in another bid. Don't care because you didn't do things up to code, basically. And maybe that'll get removed in 5 years' time or something. But, there's not much you can do to punish them. But, again, if it comes down to at least for seeding purposes or something, I think every team is going to be reporting those to set that up. When it comes time for postseason, all bets are off, though.
Yeah, that's true. All right, so let's talk about the seeds, and we'll start at the one that we have kind of been focused on for a long time, and that's subsectional A and the Trico 1A sectional. It was, all season we've talked about Waltonville, Woodlawn, and Sparta, and as the season has come, right up to this seeding point, it's kind of played out. Sparta's had to deal with some injuries, and the Bulldogs have suffered a couple of losses, so they end up the 3rd seed. Woodlawn and Waltonville split head-to-head, but Waltonville's overall resume probably a little more impressive when you look at the strength of schedule, and so the Spartans get the number 1 seed, Woodlawn 2, Sparta 3, New Athens 4, and then the 2 regional hosts are Sparta and Alvarado. And this is one of those situations where, yes, the IHSA is doing the brackets and things by seeds, but here you have a situation where Sparta is the 3 and a host, Alvarado is the 14 and a host. Well, they can't be in the same regional. Seeds would, by seed they would be, but because they're both hosts, so there will be a slight adjustment there. But Woodlawn and New Athens will go to Alvarado. Woodlawn and Sparta will be at Sparta, and so that's those are the top 4. Steelville 5, Oakville 6, and then you get into the other seeds as far as filling out the brackets. But those are the ones that kind of everybody's been paying attention to.
Well, and you mentioned Waltonville kind of getting that leg up because of their strength of schedule. But they also had to go and win some of those teams.
Oh, sure.
If you go in with that strength of schedule and you take an 0-4 against the teams that people look at and be like, you probably shouldn't win that game. If you go an 0-4, I think Woodlawn comes out on top. The fact that they beat Marion, the fact that they beat Carterville earlier in the year, I think those play to their favor here, where it's like, okay, you showed us that you can compete with the big boys, and you deserve that right there. If Woodlawn goes 2-0 against them, or if Waltonville isn't able to step up in some of those big games that they said, we want that, then I don't think that they end up getting that 1 seed. Woodlawn's very impressive. They hit a wall, but the final third of the season, they've been looking just great. So Waltonville getting those big wins throughout the season definitely helps their case here today, and they are sitting there saying, maybe we'll see you a 3rd time, but you got to go through Sparta. We don't have to.
Well, and for Waltonville, 3-1 versus 3A teams. That 1 loss was to Centralia.
That's right.
They split with Nashville and Carterville, the 2 number 1 seeds in the 2A. And the loss to Centralia, the loss to Nashville happened on back-to-back Saturdays and shootouts. By the way, those two teams are combined 50-3 in classes above Waltonville. So even though they lost, it was, I think, 60-47 to Centralia, 59-51 to Nashville.
Close losses.
I mean, they were in the game in the fourth quarter, and so nothing about those losses said to me, well, then they don't deserve the top seed. No. And I think to me, it solidified it.
Yeah, I think so as well. Like I said, those were close games. They were in those games, like you said. And that just goes to it's one of those things where the teams they're facing, you hear it a lot when you talk about 1A teams of the teams that they're facing when they go up a level. Even if it's just a 2A, well, it's a lose-lose situation for us. If we beat Waltonville, well, we're supposed to. Well, if we lose to them, well, it's definitely a big loss. Then there's some special cases, obviously, but when you're talking about cream of the crop of 1A versus cream of the crop of 2A, it's a lose-lose situation, and obviously for 3A as well. But it goes to show that Centralia, Nashville, they didn't stumble. Obviously, it's a lose-lose because it's you're supposed to beat them. But they got the win in a close game, and that goes to show things right there as well. But for Waltonville, they're like, we kept it close. We did what we were supposed to. Yeah, we would love to have another chance and try to get that win, but we made our case. And then again, like I said, they won a lot of the other games that they weren't supposed to win. And so it just, even those losses, like you said, that went to their case right there. A big deal for the Spartans.
Splitting with Woodlawn, both of those games at Woodlawn. The second game, they hammered the Cardinals pretty good. And then, of course, Woodlawn, early on, they beat Pinckneyville in the championship at Carlisle. Pinckneyville struggles a little bit this season. That hasn't helped Woodlawn's resume. That win, good win.
It was.
But not as good a win as, you thought when it happened. They beat Sparta at the Pinckneyville tournament. So, I mean, there you see why the 2 and 3. And so, I just think that these seeds make sense.
It makes a lot of sense. In terms of seeding logic, this is one that you look at and you're like, yep, I don't see anything wrong with this one.
All right, subsectional B, the top seed is Goreville, and that is zero surprise to anybody. Hardin County gets the 2 seed, NCOE 3, Cobden the 4, and Cobden is a regional host. Gallatin County is the other regional host. They are an 8, and again, we have that situation where you have 2 regionals, or 2 teams that would be in the same regional, so they're going to have to adjust the seeding a little bit there. And then the other unique part about subsectional B is it has 17 teams. Subsectional A only has 15 teams, and the reason for that was when the assignments first came out, they did not include Shawnee and Meridian. So they just added them. And
didn't shift anyone.
They didn't shift anyone. So, but they left it. They left it 17. So that means that next Saturday there will be a play-in game or a first-round game, however you want to describe it. Carrier Mills and Wolf Lake Shawnee. Those
combined
2,
1 win between the two. By the way,
they are going to go head-to-head, and the winner gets Goreville.
Actually, it might be combined too. I have to go back and look at what Wolf Lake's record is, but it's not pretty between the two of them. They've had rough seasons, but this subsectional is kind of like a deep cuts subsectional here. Goreville, obviously number 1. They did hit a little bit of a wall there in the middle of the season, just like Woodlawn did, but they got on over that hump, 3 losses.
Bounced back and beat the number 1 team in the state.
Exactly. So no big deal. But then, once you get past Goreville, unless you've really been paying attention to 1A basketball this year, some people, Hardin County is the 2 seed. They are that good, without a doubt. Century was amazing at the start of the season. They end up the 7th seed because they've hit a wall. And meanwhile, Cobden has kind of overtaken them in the GEC. Or SEC, excuse me, and just it's been a marvel to kind of watch just from afar. Just keeping track of the records alone. It was like all season long. I was like, Century might end up being a top 4 seed, but the past couple of weeks they've fallen on some tough times. I'm not sure if they may be going through some injury woes one way or another, but they started out, I think, 20-0. I mean, they had a fantastic start to the season, and just the past couple weeks they've fallen on tough times while Cobden has risen above, and so they get that 4 seed. It's been a really interesting situation for this subsectional. And like I said, it's a deep cuts because you look at it and you're just like, oh, they're there and not there. Or I can't believe. I know some people are gonna be like, the Cougars are a 2 seed. They are that good, I promise.
Well, and then the way this sets up is at the sectional, you would have the top seed of subsectional A playing the 2 seed of subsectional B, and then vice versa.
Right.
And so what that means is the road to a sectional championship for Woodlawn and Sparta is just incredibly tough because you're going to have to face each other potentially in the championship game of the regional.
That's right.
Then you're going to have to see Goreville in the opening game of the sectional.
Almost certainly, yep.
And then if again, they're theoretically by seeds.
Right. We get to prognosticate.
And so then if you win those 2 games, now you're staring at Waltonville in the sectional final. And
what a path.
And Goreville is in some ways they have the second toughest because they're going to have to face either Woodlawn or Sparta. Yeah. When you think of that crossover, and then if you beat them, then you're going to have to face Waltonville. And again, not to downplay Hardin County at all, but we've talked about those 3 or 4 teams being the cream of the crop, and then Hardin County's like, hey, we're just here to spoil the party.
That's right. Well, and you talk about Goreville, not that. No offense to Cobden, but they are kind of a level below Goreville, but Goreville's going there. So Cobden's got that home court advantage right there. And, man, at Cobden, that is a rocking place. I would not doubt the Apple Knockers at all when they're on their home floor. And, again, like I mentioned, they are rolling right now. They're doing great, so they're peaking at the right time. That if they wanted to knock off a Goreville, this is the perfect time for them to be doing it and getting to host that regional. They're in a perfect spot right now. I like the Black Cats a lot, but the Apple Knockers are, like you mentioned with Hardin County, they're just there to ruin the fun. Why not?
Right. Some of the other 1A area teams end up going to the Macon Meridian sectional as they have divided up basically east and west, the teams from the Southern Illinois region. And in subsectional B, Lawrenceville, the number 1 seed, Weber is the 2 seed, Altamont the 3, North Clay the 4, and Altamont and North Clay, as we mentioned earlier, are the 2 hosts. So Lawrenceville will be going to North Clay, Weber will be going to Altamont, and we would, certainly want to talk when we mentioned Weber. Nathaniel Marlowe comes to mind, and a couple nights ago he needed 46 points to reach 3,000, and
insane.
He drops a 50 piece, 51 to be exact, on senior night. Yeah. To surpass 3,000.
I mean, he can just do it at will, I mean, he mentioned to you after the game about I wasn't really paying attention until we got to about 2,900, and then I was like, oh, we're here. And then he comes in and just is like, yeah, I'm going to do it tonight. I mean, like, no doubt in his mind, I'm going to get there. He's just that good of a scorer, and now he's up to number 7 all time, and we can, I mean, there's limited games for him at this point, but we can now start to really look at the chase to how far can he get up that list. Can he reach Chico? I don't know about that, but I mean, he scores so much that we can have that conversation.
Right. And a few games ago, I did some math, and he needed 263 points to pass Andy Kaufman, who is second all time, and that was with 10, and that was just figuring to the regional final. Right. Okay, and so that was 10 games. And so that's averaging 26-3 a game.
Yeah, which he pretty much does.
I mean, that's I think below his season average.
Yeah.
And so now if you go to the sectional, if you get to the sectional final, well, that's 12 games. If you were to get to the Super, 13, and if you win the Super, you're going to go to state and get 15. Well, now all of a sudden, Chico's record it's still a stretch. I mean, he would have had to average, I believe, more than 31 a game. Right. And in considering how the road is going to get tougher, the venues get tougher to shoot in because of places that you haven't been and big arenas, that type of thing. But the fact that we're even talking about that is incredible.
Yeah, like I said, it's the fact that we can have that conversation. Is it going to be surpassed? It just always has felt like this type of record that is untouchable. And, year and a half ago was when people really started saying, hey, if you haven't been paying attention to the Marlowe kid, you probably should. And can we ask that question? And you and I both were like, no, we're not going to ask that question. But as kind of the season wore on last year, we got to the end of it, and I remember us both talking and like, well, if you do the math, and he's going to have to do this, but he's shown that he could, not that he will, but that he could. Right. And then this senior season has been fantastic for him.
And the team is going to have to make a long run.
Yes, they're going,
and they have the capability.
And we had said that when we had that conversation, I believe, off mic last year, they're going to have to make a long run. They're going to have to go to at least a sectional title, and they have that capability. He's still going to have. You're going to have every morning with me saying, "Hey, you thought he was good? Well, let me tell you what he did this time."
Well, he's at 3,005, and so Joe Aiden from Dongola is next at 3,033, so that's 28 points. Yeah. John Shire is only a point ahead, so he is, he's 30 points away from being in the top 5.
It's amazing.
He's 44 from being in the top 4, and he just dropped 51. Yeah. The other night. So very interesting. But again, we talked about the tough road for Woodlawn and Sparta potentially. Well, Weber's in that same boat. They're going to have to, again, if the seeds hold, they're going to have to beat Altamont at Altamont in the regional final. And so then as the 2 seed, you're going to get the number 1 from the other side, which is Tuscola. Mm-hmm. And so that will not be a picnic. And then potentially, if the seeds were to hold, you would have to get through Lawrenceville in the championship game. But I will say this. Lawrenceville, first time seeing them last Saturday at the Rich Herring Classic, I mean, they're legit.
Oh, yeah.
But I will say this. Even though Weber lost earlier in the day, they had to feel really good about seeing Goreville beat Lawrenceville.
Probably.
And then knowing that, hey, we just won at Goreville. That Goreville team just beat Lawrenceville. So, look, they're very good, but it's not like it's it's not like the Oklahoma City Thunder are sitting there waiting for us in the sectional final.
Right, exactly. It's going to be interesting, and I'm sure they'd love to be in the other side, obviously, because as you mentioned, you're going to places that you've maybe been once, for a camp or something potentially. We're talking Macon Meridia, you're talking about Tuscola and all this. It's like you're going places, you're seeing teams that you've never even considered before, and so it's a difficult situation. Whereas if you're in the other sectional, you're like, okay, we've been here a few times. We've seen these teams. We get an idea. This is kind of uncharted territory. But you know what? When you talk about stories, Nathaniel Marlowe wouldn't want it any other way. I want to go ahead. I've beaten those guys. I've done what I've proven that I can do that. Let me prove that I can do it against these other teams, these other dragons that people have never heard of before. I'm going to go and be the hero of that story too. So it'll be interesting. But if he's able to drive his team to a deep run against these teams that they normally don't see on these courts that they normally don't play on, man, what a story that'll be. And to be a Weber fan right now, I can't imagine just how elated they feel and how excited they feel. And I mean, just from an outsider's point of view for them, I hope they get a long run. But obviously, every game go in being like, this could be the last one, and we should enjoy what we have in front of us.
Well, and you think about what a year for Jefferson County basketball.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got the 3 W's in Waltonville, Woodlawn, and Weber. Mount Vernon's had a fantastic season as well, and so just the potential of a W versus W in the state semifinals.
How about that?
I mean, that would be, you talk
Make
about
it happen.
Script writers. I mean, that, and again, not to be a conspiracy guy, but it appears that the IHSA has made, the South teams, we're going to divide you East and West, and you're going to have to go through teams that are further north to make sure that you get there. And then the funniest thing that could happen would be Waltonville and Weber, or Woodlawn and Weber, or Sparta, either in the mix there in the state semifinal.
And we've talked about the behind the scenes stuff with Waltonville and Woodlawn multiple times this year. Either way, if they make it to a state final, that's again, I'm all about stories. Either way, that is a heck of a story to do that. And then if you meet Weber, it's like, man, you could not draw that up any better.
And even if it's Lawrenceville, I mean,
Sure.
this is another 6-1-8 team that just shows how the depth that we've talked about all year in 1A. Now let's shift to 2A in the Nashville sectional. In the subsectional A, the host Hornets are the top seed. Breeze Central is the 2, Columbia the 3. Followed by Westland, Pinckneyville, Mater Dei, Althoff, and then you mentioned Herons now in this mix, and the Tigers are the 8th seed. Columbia and Pinckneyville, the 2 regional hosts, is 3 and 5. So this one should go. The pairing should be just as the numbers should be, and that would put Nashville and Westland in the same regional. And that would also be with Pinckneyville. So Nashville, Westland, and Pinckneyville in the same regional. That would put Central, Columbia, and then Mater Dei and Althoff in the same regional as well. And so what's interesting about that is one of Nashville's 2 losses came to Westland early in the season.
Right.
And then, of course, Westland may not get another shot at them. They've got to deal with Pinckneyville on their home floor.
Yeah, exactly. And I guarantee you Pinckneyville's licking their chops right now. If I recall correctly now, I was looking at the schedule earlier today. I believe Nashville-Pinckneyville is happening tonight as well.
Yep.
So we're recording before that game. But Pinckneyville right now is licking their chops saying that third matchup, win or lose tonight, that third matchup, you got to go through our gym. You might have to go through us. And so they're definitely looking at it as not even to play spoiler so much because that's not the Pinckneyville mindset, but just the fact that it's like we got all the cards falling our way here. Pinckneyville is loving this situation right here, and then they would obviously love to be like go just about 20 miles north and play in that sectional in that gym and kind of just a ha-ha, na-na, boo-boo type of situation right there. But, man, that Pinckneyville regional right there is it's a delicious-looking regional.
Yeah, no doubt. And then on subsectional B, Carterville gets the top seed. Benton is the 2, followed by Murphy, AJ, Hamco, and Massac County. That's your top 6. Vienna is 7, Frankfort 8. The 2 regional hosts are Benton and Massac County. Now, those 2 would be, as the 2 and the 6, they'd be in the same regional. So with Benton being the 2, they're going to host Murfreesboro. That regional is going to be as it is. That means that Carterville is going to have to go to Massac County and be the top seed. And what's interesting about that is the Patriots own one of the 3 losses that Carterville has suffered this year. So some very interesting matchups here as we look at what's ahead in 2A.
Well, and we just talked about Pinckneyville, Nashville happening tonight. Carterville, Massac County's happening tonight as well at Carterville. But yeah, that's it's shaping up to be an appetizing regional situation for 2A. Obviously 1A, we just got through talking about how appetizing that whole run right there for 1A is appetizing. But for the regionals for 2A, I don't know if you could script it any better, this situation. We look at the Benton one, the Benton regional as well, and I've been telling people Murfreesboro is sitting there saying, give us another shot, give us another shot. They lost to Benton in December. They were without Kemion Hale in that game. And so that affected how Benton could defend. They said, we don't have to worry about a 6'7" guy down in the middle. We can go ahead and kind of defend how we want to defend. And that affected how that game was played. Now with Kemion Hale back in the lineup, they're definitely sitting there saying, give us that chance. And so they've got their chance now. Obviously, you got to get to the finals, but they've got their chance, and we're going to find out which one's the better team. And that's an appetizing regional final potential right there.
Well, and when you look at the seeding and the numbers, and I know there had been a little bit of discussion about who's going to be the one there because Benton beat Carterville last Saturday. It was in overtime, 55-51. But I think that the overall resume strength of Carterville is the difference. And I know there will be the questions about how, well, within this subsectional, we did everything we were supposed to do if you're Benton and you're making your case for the top seed. And then overall, Carterville's like, hey, we beat the number 1 on the other side. And so Benton has lost twice to Nashville.
I think if you want to talk about just how the seeding played, I think that loss to Nashville is really what played more a factor than anything else because it was a dominating win for Nashville. Right. You want to talk about beating Carterville, that's great, Ben, but one of these 2 teams has beaten Nashville, and the other one took a 30-point loss to Nashville.
And they lost by 20 earlier in the season as well because that's a conference game. And then the hard part is the reason you don't want the 2 is because if the seeds hold, guess who you're going to see in the first round of the sectional at Nashville?
That's true.
The Hornets.
That's right.
So you understand why Benton was really wanting that top seed.
Yeah.
And again, not that Bree Central would be a picnic, as the 2 seed the other way. So again, very interesting there. We also have some teams that are headed to the north and east in the Monticello sectional. Subsectional A, T-Town the number 1 seed, Effingham St. Anthony the 2, Fairfield is the 3, Salem the 4. Regional hosts are Vandalia and Robinson. Flora is also in that subsectional. They are a 10 seed.
Salem being a 4 seed is really interesting because they've had an up and down season, and it's a situation where
which one are you going to get?
Right, exactly. Are you going to get Jekyll or Hyde right there? But they've had some really impressive wins. I can't remember what their record is right now. I want to say that they're under 500. I could be wrong about that. But to see them as a 4 seed kind of shocks me a little bit.
And again, those regionals feed into the Monticello sectional. Before we leave 2A, on the other side of the Carbondale super sectional is the Pleasant Plains sectional. And just looking at the top seed, subsectional A, you got Quincy, Notre Dame, Williamsville, Rochester, and Verdon North Mac in subsectional A. Staunton, Roxana, Alton, Marquette, and Carlinville in subsectional B. And I think most people feel like Quincy, Notre Dame is the favorite,
without a doubt,
to get out of that sectional. But again, you've got to win the games, and I've already seen people go, there's no good way to get from Quincy to Carbondale.
There is not.
It's a 4-hour journey for a super sectional on a school night, no less.
Yeah. No, well, I had not looked at that until you just pulled it up right there, and I saw Quincy, Notre Dame. That's why I laughed, because I was like, yep, there it is. There it is. So, that is without a doubt the favorite to come out of that. And like you said, there's no good way to get from Quincy on a school night to SIU. So whoever gets to go to SIU from the other side has that a little bit playing in their favor.
Right.
But, I've watched too many times where it's been like, man, this is going to be a tough trek for this team. And then they come out like gangbusters, and it doesn't matter that they had this long trek and everything. So it'll play a small factor. It won't play a big factor, but Quincy, Notre Dame's always good. They're always got a bunch of athletes. So don't be surprised if they do make it to the super sectional, and then if that road trip doesn't matter at all.
All right, we're going to move on to 3A for the last group that includes our area teams, and it's subsectional B. And this year, East St. Louis is in the mix. And, in past years, East Side has been in the other subsectional, so haven't had to deal with them. But instead, they are in this subsectional, and they are the number 1 seed. Centralia gets the 2, Mount Vernon the 3, Marion, Mascoutah, Carbondale, Cahokia, and Waterloo. There's only 8 teams in the subsectional. Centralia and Mascoutah are the 2 hosts as the 2 and the 5. That works out great. So this one should break down strictly by seeding, which puts Marion having to deal with Mascoutah at Mascoutah in the first game. And if you win that, you're more than likely going to get East St. Louis.
Yeah, I was talking to Ben Greenberger about that last night, actually, and he just sounded kind of dejected because he was like, it is what it is, but they really didn't give Marion an easy path by any means.
No.
Marion is young, though. This will be a great experience for them, whether they beat Mascoutah or they lose to Mascoutah, to run into potentially 2 really tough teams. It'll be a great experience for them to set up for the future. Like I said, they're really young. I think they'll have just about everyone back next year. They're going to lose Sam Adkins and Callahan Roper, but everybody else is going to be back. This will be a good experience for them, if nothing else. They're kind of going to be playing with house money from the very start.
Sure.
And just go out there. Gus Gillespie's going to have his guys ready and treat it like it's the Super Bowl and just see how long they can last basically in it.
Well, and then, again, the discussion points, we mentioned Carterville, Benton, the discussion points of East St. Louis and Centralia as the 1 and the 2. Centralia, obviously, the gaudy record, 26-1, and only lost to Chicago Marist in the championship game. East St. Louis, not as gaudy a record, but, again, it gets back to that resume and the teams that they have played and where they have played. I think the overwhelming thought here is that should be the number 1 seed. And what that does is potentially, if the seeds hold, Centralia and Mount Vernon for a regional final Centralia. And that's, again, another tasty match.
Yeah, that was one that when I pulled it all up, I was like, oh, well, they're going to do it quickly then. So that'll be fun, if nothing else, if the seeds hold right there. But yeah, when I saw Centralia, I was like, I mean, East St. Louis is East St. Louis, obviously, but still to be 26-1 on this Friday, going into play Marion later today, to be 26-1 and be the 2 seed. It's like, what do we got to do?
Right.
But like you said, East St. Louis, it sounded like you're describing their football team, quite honestly, there for a minute, but that the East Side is willing to play anybody at any point with all of their teams, because they want to prove a point that, yeah, we are the best.
Yeah. And on the other side, subsectional A, Triad, the number 1 seed, Jacksonville, Mattoon, Taylorville, Glenwood, Civic, Memorial, Highland, Jerseyville, and Charleston. Now, Triad as a number 1 seed is also hosting. Jerseyville, an 8 seed, is hosting, so they're going to have to do a little tweak there. But with only 9 teams, the tweak clearly is going to be 9 playing 7 instead of 8 playing 9. I mean, that pretty well seems the way that's going to play out. And again, that's those 2 subsectionals feed into the Waterloo sectional. And then on the other side is the Mahomet Seymour sectional. Subsectional A, Decatur, MacArthur, Lincoln, Springfield, and Lanphier, your top 4. And then
what a group.
And subsectional B, Normal U, Champaign Centennial, Mahomet Seymour, and Champaign Central is the other. And having seen MacArthur in person up at Collinsville, it just, oh, mercy. That is a legit ball club. And whoever comes out of Waterloo, if that's the team you're facing, that's going to be a heck of a super sectional.
Growing up in the Big 12 with where MacArthur has been for several years, basketball school. They're a basketball school. Yeah. They'd be good in football every once in a while. It'd be a challenge, but basketball was their bread and butter. They're a basketball school, and like we just listed it down there. I mean, that is a type of a cream of the crop type of subsectional right there. That that'll be entertaining for the folks up north.
And then one other note before we leave you is back from the IHSA board meeting notes that came out. One of the big things that came out of this meeting was that the 1A, 2A baseball state championships, they're going to be on the move, and it's going to be from Peoria, and it's now going to be in Champaign at the University of Illinois field. Last year, the U of I stepped in as a pinch hitter when there were some issues scheduling wise in Peoria. And they certainly they made a good impression, and I think the need, especially with the fact that we're going to be doing all these in the same weekend now. They're still separating 3A, 4A, so that eliminates some of it. But with the weather potential, with the turf at the U of I field, and it just gives a little bit of more flexibility, if weather does become a problem.
Yeah, well, we talked about it last year about seeing this as potentially the new reality, and did we see it happening, 9 months later? Not necessarily, but I'm not surprised by it by any means. It's a good move, and so here's hoping that we have less problems in the future, Well,
and again, it's a quality facility. It's got all the bells and whistles. And, when it comes to even at the state tournament, you're not having massive crowds like you do for basketball or potentially even for football. But still, it's a great facility, and it'll be very interesting to see the state there this year.
And then final note also, we don't have anything out yet, but the voting did close yesterday for are we moving things back for football? We'll probably see results from that here in the coming week or so, but it's on the way, folks. So either way, be prepared.
Well, it feels like a Friday news dump.
It sure does.
The release is going to come just about the same time as the pairings. And then it's like, well, have a great weekend, everyone.
Because either way it goes, you're going to have an angry party. I think we've talked about it. I think we know which angry party it's going to be, but we'll let it come out.
Right, and again, you have those that are like, why are we voting on a safety issue?
Yeah.
You have those that are saying vote no on it, so that it's going to force their hand to do something. And so, again, you go back to where we started and the coaches' seating and all this and that is like you see the human element involved in certain circumstances.
Well, you can't get 800 schools into one room. We talk about just doing regionals, and we can't even do that anymore. So if you can't get 15, 16 coaches into a room together, you're certainly not going to get 800 ADs together.
Right. And if you had that many on Zoom, half of them are not going to mute it. And what a zoo that would be.
Well, you're going to have half of that half purposely not mute. The other half aren't going to realize they're not muted, and you're just going to have some guy eating Subway on his lunch break as Craig Anderson, whoever is talking, and you're just going to be like, why is Joe eating his sandwich right now on my screen?
And you know what's great is that the folks that are watching this at home all have been through this, and they can picture exactly what you're talking about. Well, that's going to do it for us this week. Be sure to join us next week, same time, same place. For Matty V, I'm Darren Kinnard. Thanks for joining us here on the River Radio Sports Central podcast.